All right. Hello, hello. Welcome to our Hormone Freedom Hour. So excited to be here with everyone and you ladies. And today we have even more exciting news. I'm so excited because together, Helen and I are partnering. You guys are going to get to meet Helen Vierney, and we are partnering under the Hormone Freedom umbrella to support women. So today's conversation is why your metabolism feels different after 40 and what your hormones are actually telling you. So, before we dive into our teaching for today, I'd love to hear where you're joining from. Some of you are going to be joining live, and welcome in the Zoom room. We're streaming to Substack, we're streaming to Instagram. So if you're here joining us live in real time, please feel free to type into the chat right now live. Then I always like to come back and make sure I answer any questions. We circle back and say hello to you. If you're coming back and catching it later, watching the replay, please type replay in because again, we will circle back to your chances. And Rose from Shrewsbury, England. Great to have you with us, Rose. Welcome, Jilly. Great to have you. Hi, we have Regina, and yes, different people streaming in. Again, please be sure to type if you're watching us live or if you're catching the replay later, so we can come back and welcome you and just circle back and connect. And like I said, I'm so excited. Today is a chance to meet Helen Vierney. She and I are partnering together under the Hormone Freedom Support. And Helen, do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself? I mean, I have such respect for Helen. She's been working with women in the health space and helping them to move beyond the diet for over 7 years, Helen, and your
Yeah.
work is so powerful.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It is such an honor and a pleasure to be here, Amanda. And the fact that you and I are going to do some incredible things together, it really speaks to my heart because you and I have known each other for quite some time and we've been brewing up some great things to help women with root cause healing, moving beyond the diet, thinking about their bodies beyond counting calories and doing all of the things that just haven't worked really since the 1990s. They certainly didn't work for me in the 1990s. And, we talk about hormones after 40, but I always tell my clients, I'm like, I messed everything up in my 20s, so I could tell you how to do it now in your 40s. I used to struggle with weight gain and even like night sweats and waking up in the middle of the night and horrible sleep and anxiety and all of those things that a lot of women that we talk to who are experiencing that now, I swear I went through it in my younger years and went through a journey of healing myself to move beyond that, move beyond the diet, learn how to speak to myself kindly, learn how to move out of the diet culture space and really into what true healing feels like. And for me to be able to partner with you in doing that is, again, just such an honor. And I'm really happy to be here and to join your conversations now.
Yes, Helen, I think I can relate to you. I think we both have that similar experience of, we kind of we kind of messed up our health in our own ways early on, so that we were here positioned and poised to be able to add this value and to support women who are now experiencing it, maybe for the first time, or maybe things have just shifted. So absolutely, that was for me. It was my early 30s when that autoimmune diagnosis like really kind of knocked me over, you know, with my own health journey. But yes,
Yeah.
together, this is exactly why we feel both so passionate about helping women to step into greater clarity and greater empowerment around their health. So before we dive into today, I'd love to just check in. It's always a good chance for us to pause and to see how we are feeling. So if you could type one word into the chat, one word into the comment, again, if you're catching this on live stream, let us know what is one word that describes how you're feeling in your body this week. It's helpful to just do that self-awareness, do that reflection. And I'll pause here, give us a moment. For me, I'm going to admit, like, I'm feeling tired. This week has been a very full week, and I didn't get the best sleep coming off of a little bit of travel, but my word is tired. Undernourished, I'm seeing bloated. Okay. Anything else coming up? Yeah, fatigue. Okay. So it's good. It's good to check in and just kind of see. Thank you for sharing that. Okay now, but earlier in the week I had a real meltdown, stressed over technical issues. I hear
Mm.
you, Rose, on that. That's definitely sometimes it's like our margin seems very limited, right? I'm glad that you are recovering and feeling better now. Well, thank you for, again, just taking that to check in right now, I think what's so valuable is to know that there's a gap, there's a meaningful gap in the conversation around what's healthy and what's truly hormone healthy after 40, because our bodies do shift, they do change, and most women don't recognize this gap that exists between, what it means to truly be healthy and set yourself up for that longevity of health versus I'm kind of functioning and getting through my day. So in 2026, a lot of times the conversation is around symptoms, right? It's around the hot flashes, it's around the weight gain, it's around our brain fog or anxiety. And what, is the conversation around, we know that our hormone levels change. We know that perimenopause and menopause is affecting the body, but I want to go beyond the conversation of just focusing on the symptom, just focusing on the hot flashes or focusing on the weight gain, because I think most women don't realize that this transition, this change in our body is affecting so many different systems and so many different parts of the bodies. It literally affects our brain because, now we know that the brain, all the different neurons and cells in the brain have different receptors for even estrogen and progesterone. It affects our heart and our cardiovascular health. It absolutely affects our metabolism and our insulin sensitivity and our even our thyroid health. It affects, yes, your bones and your muscles too. So it really goes so much broader than just, am I struggling with hot flashes, or do I have some extra pounds that are creeping on and seem to be stuck? But these are the things that oftentimes are not brought up or not highlighted, not discussed in your doctor's appointments. And again, no disservice, no discredit to doctors, but oftentimes in a 12-minute appointment, they just don't have the capacity to go into these deeper layers of how, you know, the gap that exists between, like, you have this disease or here's a diagnosis and you are truly vibrantly healthy. You're feeling and living with energy, with mental clarity, with an ability to feel hopeful and to feel inspired and to feel energized frequently in your life. So it's interesting to think about that gap that oftentimes just gets overlooked and it gets dismissed, especially if you're told that your labs are fine and there's no like diagnosable situation that's come up in your doctor's appointments, right? This is where I feel like menopause and the hormone changes quietly does its damage in those different systems in our brain and our metabolism, in our bone health, that if we're not getting curious and leaning in, it's a really great missed opportunity. Um, so Helen, I
Yeah.
don't know if you have anything or if you have anything you want to add here about that kind of that
Yeah,
gap.
I was thinking about that, not just the gap, but this idea that so many women are walking around with the hot flashes and the brain fog and the energy levels and some bloating and a lot of the things that you guys have mentioned in the chat, feeling undernourished. And they walk around and they feel like they're just alone in this. And even when they bring it up to their doctors, sometimes they're dismissed, like, oh, it's just perimenopause, or oh, it's just this thing going on for you. And they don't often talk about, Amanda, the things that you are talking about with the brain, the heart, and the metabolism. They're just talking about these surface things and how can we stop those surface things instead of find this level of prevention underneath of it. And not only is there that loneliness that women feel when they're like, okay, well, guess this is my life, guess this is just what I'm going to have to do. There's also a lot of competing and confusing information about how to take care of it. And often it's also surface based too, right? Like it's, could be glucose monitors, could be Aura rings or Apple watches, or things that they think are so simple, like cutting carbs that used to work, but it doesn't work anymore. Intermittent fasting that stresses out the body to a point where it's hard to release weight, or even going on GLP-1s. Like these can be solutions, but they're still not going to the root cause of what's actually going on there.
Yes, totally. And that's the thing is I feel like women are doing now more than ever in favor of their health, like trying. It's not for lack of effort. It's not for lack of trying. Really, this is what I love. And this is why I think you and I are both so passionate about working with women, especially over 40, because we are in an age and in a time where people are leaning in and people are really taking action and taking initiative to improve their health. And yet, so many women that I talk to every single week are feeling more exhausted. They're feeling more inflamed and more frustrated than ever because it's one thing if you know that you're just not even giving any attention and energy to it. It's another thing if you feel like you're trying all of these things and not making progress, not making headway. So I just want to pause here and ask, has anyone experienced this before? Drop in the chat. Feel free to drop in in the messaging app if you're streaming and listening. But let us know, is this something that you have tried some of these different things that Helen was mentioning and either had experience or still feeling a struggle? Yeah, I always
Yeah,
like
I
to
always
know.
see these reels, Amanda, where there's women who it's like women in perimenopause be like, and they've got the weighted vests and they've got the hydration packs and they've got the electrolytes and they've got the tracker and they've got the glucose monitor. And it's like we really are trying so freaking hard and it's
Yeah,
laughable because it's true. Like
it is true.
the
It is
collection of
true.
things is it's so true.
Absolutely. And it's not, this is the key thing. Today I want to give this invitation. It's not that you're doing things wrong. It's just a different lens. And I think the most important thing is we want to focus on a different approach rather than just piling on and doing more things. Like you said, grab the weighted vest, grab the electrolytes, grab all of the things rather than just piling it on. It's most conversations around hormones, around menopause, around perimenopause, they're focused on like HRT and estrogen levels and progesterone levels. And that debate can get really loud. It can actually kind of drown out what is truly a not just a symptom event. Like I said, what is a health event? What is a shift and a change in your health? And I just want to pause here. Rose is saying, I did fasting since 2012 and that was good. But then I was diagnosed with osteoporosis. So I've had to stop fasting. So, okay, this is a prime example, right? A lot of times we have some tools or some strategies that maybe worked well, or we're working for a certain season in our life or to reach some milestone or some goals. But then now it's created a different set of circumstances. Like in Rose's situation, she stopped fasting and she's had to gain a few extra pounds, but they don't seem to want to leave, right? So it's like learning what is the new normal. So thank you, Rose, for sharing that and being honest, because I think we can all relate. Like this is what it is. It's like we're figuring out what is the new puzzle piece, what is the new way to approach. And what I think is important to recognize is that we're going to be focusing on today's conversation on the changes in metabolism because we know that hormonal shift for women's bodies affects these different systems. We've talked about affects the brain, affects the bones, affects, our cardiovascular health. It affects our metabolism in a significant way. And what most women don't understand is metabolism, they think about it as like a calorie equation, is like calories in, calories out. And I know you do a lot of work with this, Helen, in helping women to like move beyond the diet culture um, after 40, that frame of metabolism, calories in, calories out, tracking everything, it's not only insufficient, it's it can be actively misleading, honestly, because metabolism is a hormonal system. We know that thyroid hormone controls the rate at which our cells utilize energy. It can convert fuel into energy, right? So we have to look at how our thyroid is functioning. We know that cortisol determines whether our body is in that growth mode and that parasympathetic rest and digest mode, or if it's protection mode, if it's in that fight or flight and it's going to purposefully hold on to and conserve fat. We know that estrogen and progesterone modulate insulin sensitivity and fat distribution. So when our hormone environment shifts after age 40, or for some women it's later after age 45, that metabolic quite literally changes and shifts with it. Not because your system is broken, but because the inputs have changed. And most women have never been told clearly how this change affects their body and how to how to operate in this new environment.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we tend to really think about it just going back to the calorie thing. It's like if we're not taking into the whole equation, everything that's going on with thyroid or cortisol or estrogen, we tend to get obsessed with just eating less or having less food, calorie restriction. And I work with a lot of women on GLP-1s on reducing side effects and eating enough and making sure that they're nourished so that they can taper off eventually. And the problem with that I see most is that it's back to calorie restriction. It's almost like the 1990s again, where it's like, well, if I eat less, I lose weight. But what happens as a result? There's this whole bounce back of what's going on with your body once you lose the weight and you want to taper off because the body is like craving and wanting to put everything back in. But if you get to that root cause of the cravings and the issues and the energy levels and the energy dips and the midsection weight gain through hormone balance and through metabolic health, you're doing something else. And you can do that alongside of going on a GLP-1 journey. I absolutely support any woman that's going on the journey that she wants to when it comes to their metabolism and weight loss, but you have to do it in the right way. And you have to do it by listening to all those components of the body, not just one component and get fixated on that because that's the part of your body that you hate most. There's an opportunity to love your body through understanding what's actually going on underneath of it. That is exactly what you're talking about, Amanda.
Yes, exactly. Because these hormones that we're talking about, they don't operate in isolation.
That's right.
So they're part of this bigger communication system, right? We talked about the system that starts in the brain. It connects to your adrenals. It connects to your thyroid. It connects to your gut. All of these signals together, these hormones signal together. And this means your cortisol threshold, nutrient demands, your recovery requirements, they change. They're different. And so part of this, I truly believe that this season of life is actually very divinely designed, that
Mm-hmm.
our as women, our bodies do shift and change, because it's almost like we had those years where we were primary caregiver, caretaker of other people's needs, whether it be our families, our kids, our spouses, our careers, where oftentimes it's normal and it was commonplace to put our self-care kind of lower on the list, right? And then when we hit this new season of life, our body, quite literally through symptoms, I believe, Helen, like won't let us to continue to do that,
Yeah,
because it's getting louder and saying, no, 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 we have to reacclimate. It's almost like an invitation to lean in and to start to understand and learn and become curious and be willing to like try things and learn about your body more than ever before, because that's what's actually going to give you that longevity. If we're looking at like extending quality of life for decades, what you do in your 40s and your 50s and your early 60s is the primary determinant of how you will live in your 70s and your 80s and your 90s, right? So
yeah,
once that buffer has diminished, with the buffer being the sex hormones of estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, that means, the late nights. That means the fasted exercise. That means the back-to-back commitments on your calendar, like one thing to the next. That means the skipped meals. That buffer no longer is adequate, right? The same routines and the patterns that you used to be able to get away with, or used to be able to like live on and produce energy and still be functional, are get to shift. And I say get to shift because it is like a learning a new normal.
it
And I
is. It's
think,
like this.
oh, go
Sorry, I
ahead.
don't want to, but you said something that just really like is so important mindset wise is the difference between that curiosity mindset of what's going on for me and what can I change versus frustration, like how can I do more of this or how can I go at this harder instead of wondering about what's underneath of it that you can possibly change, like being curious about your stress, being curious about your sleep instead of, like hitting everything hard and being frustrated with yourself and saying nothing's working. That curiosity mindset of what can I learn from what's actually going on right now is so key to what you're talking about.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to answer in this question here. So Rose asks a very interesting question. She said, I love this. Do you think women's bodies are sensitive to the moon cycles, especially after menopause? Rose, a great question. I can speak to my experiences. I have found that even after women are no longer menstruating, right? So we know, and science has shown for a while now, that we definitely have different cyclical cycles during our menstruating years, right? During childbirth years, during the years where we are literally ovulating and your body has those hormone fluctuations. However, I do believe that, especially energetically, intuitively, we still continue to have that cyclical nature, and oftentimes it can correlate with the moon, the lunar cycles for some women, if they're kind of aligned and if they, are in sync with that. And again, I think that's divine design, because as women, we're there's a value in kind of like the nature cycles. There's value in the day and the moon. There's value in the activity, in
Hmm.
the kind of what I say, the creation, the growth, the new innovation, and there's value in the rest and the like kind of quiet, the recovery side of the equation. So yeah, and Helen, I see you shaking your head. I don't know if you want to add anything to that
Yeah, I
comment or
mean, I
that
love
question.
what you're saying about the balance between like the light and the dark, the sun and the moon, the rest and the activity. And I feel like we're always like go, 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 like problem solve, figure it out, like light activity, afraid of that downtime, the rest, and frankly, like the darkness that we can experience
Mhm.
in order to find balance and achieve that in our bodies. And I think you nailed it. Like that balance of, and also the masculine and feminine is so important for us in order to be able
Mhm.
to not to just like create change, but to listen to our bodies. And I agree with you about the moon cycle after menopause. I mean, yeah, all of these things, those aren't changing, right? Our bodies might be changing, but the cycles of the earth and the moon and nature are always the same. And I think that we can rely on those to really listen more deeply, for sure.
And what's beautiful about this, Rose, I love that question. And actually, I have, as we look at this, and this is where I'm saying, so I think a lot of the key for women to start to create a shift, to start to see change and response from their body is to understand which pattern their body is speaking the loudest because our symptoms are signals, like our hormones and our body is always going to give us clues, but it does so through symptoms because it can't just like have a conversation with us, right? So most women, what I find, they don't actually have a discipline problem. What they have is a sequencing problem. It's really recognizing and almost like decoding, what is my body trying to point to? What is my body giving me as its signs of like waving the red flag and saying, hey, this is what I want you to pay attention to. This is where I can use some support. And this is exactly why the women who come into our world, we don't give them generic advice. It's about helping them to see which pattern they fall into. And there are three primary hormone patterns that I see over and over and over. The first is what is like energy and output fatigue. This is really where there's more of like a insulin or metabolism slowdown. Really, this is like fatigue driven metabolism, where the body is like not effectively converting fuel into energy. So this usually looks like the woman who can push and push and push until she's exhausted. Like you maybe start strong and then you fall off because you don't have the stamina that you used to, right? Or sometimes this can look like the woman who I used to be able to go and do my Orange Theory workout, and I used to be able to do a HIIT workout and feel energized. Now I just feel like completely crashed for the rest of the day, right? This often looks like a slowdown in the thyroid hormone pathway.
Mm.
And it's important to know if our body, it's interesting because a lot of times we'll, from a clinical perspective, I have women that will say, well, my doctor told me my TSH is fine. And TSH is the standard primary indicator of thyroid health. However, we know it goes much deeper than that. It's actually how well is your body converting the bioavailable form of thyroid, which is our T3 bioactive thyroid hormone, from the T4, the kind of inactive form, which is what majority of your thyroid gland actually makes, like 90% of the T4 inactive form. And it needs to be converted into the active form in the liver and in the kidney and other organs through nutrients. So again, we're kind of looking at that nutrient density. Does your body getting all of the materials that it needs in order to be able to have strong, good, effective thyroid hormone action and have your energy and metabolism be strong? So that's the kind of the first pattern I see is the energy and output fatigue, where your metabolism is really like just lower than ideal. And the answer here again is to support that conversion, to look at the deeper layers of our metabolism and our thyroid conversion pathway to see if we have all of the materials, if you have the right nutrients, if you are balancing your blood sugar so that you can have that stronger metabolism.
Yeah, I mean, balancing your blood sugar is, it's kind of like a hype these days, like balanced blood sugar, insulin sensitivity. It's like a hot topic. And a lot of what people think about when they think about balancing blood sugar is how much protein can I possibly pump into my body? But like you said, Amanda, it's a balance of nutrients. It's a balance of fiber, the right micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, and also protein that can be really the key for balancing blood sugar. And people also don't think about those lifestyle factors, right? They don't think about sleep. They don't think about taking some breaks in the middle of the day or taking some breaths or balancing the nervous system. All of that are really drivers of blood sugar as well. So for those of you that are experiencing midday energy crashes between like 2 and 4 p.m. and you're like raiding the pantry because you just want to bring that energy up, you're probably experiencing some blood sugar imbalances that are really creating those cravings and that desire to feel more awake when your body may need some rest or you're missing some sort of nutritional component. It's not just about protein, and in fact, a lot of women who I support who come to me and they're like, I tried, eating X amount of grams of protein, and I actually felt worse. I
Yeah.
felt sicker. I couldn't even possibly get that much protein into my body. So we have to think about balancing blood sugar as more than just piling on protein with every single meal and take into account this holistic perspective, which can also, in effect, help with the thyroid.
Definitely. Definitely. Yes. Okay. So let's move into the type two. The second pattern that I see most common is stress response, right? And this is where your body is stuck in that chronic fight or flight stress response. This is what I see as like a cortisol driven metabolism pattern. And your body gets in that protection mode and it can't get out of protection mode. And this is where it starts to signal like store fat instead of convert fat into energy. And the our nervous system is really reading the environment that we're living in as a threat. So practically speaking, oftentimes this looks like the woman who comes to me and says like, Amanda, I just can't get my like thoughts to shut down. It's almost like my brain is just going and going and going. And this like consistent ruminating thoughts or wired but tired feeling. Or somebody who's like, I just can't sit still. I have a hard time like just actually putting my feet up and relaxing because again, it feels uncomfortable to them. Or it can teeter to the other extreme of like, I'm completely exhausted. I'm all like wiped out. It's hard for me to get up in the morning. Sometimes I have that like I remember a woman, Shannon, that I worked with, where she said, I literally feel like I'm dragging myself out of bed because she didn't have a regular, consistent cortisol awakening response. It's called your CAR, your cortisol awakening response that we typically see when cortisol would be the highest early in the day to kind of get you up and get you like ready to go for the day. This is when the body is just dysregulated from a cortisol perspective. It can look like I'm all in until I'm not, until I'm completely, absolutely can't keep the pace. And the answer here, if we find that it's like a type 2 cortisol driven metabolism imbalance, then this is about reducing those inputs that are keeping cortisol elevated or to build recovery windows. And I do like to look, I'm actually going to go ahead and share my screen here for just a moment because I do think it's helpful to see kind of what we were talking about earlier, what Rose brought up, which was really interesting to see. Give me a second, see if I can share this. Do you do you see coming up a little screen about,
Mhm.
okay, perfect. It's showing. When we think about stress, oftentimes I think people think like, oh yeah, I have stress, mental, emotional stress. And that certainly is a component of stress. But I like to see visually, like there are many different types of stressors that can be affecting our overall health and our energy level and keeping us in that like fat storage mode instead of in your optimal energy and metabolism mode. It can be physical stress from injury or overtraining, right? We talked about sometimes we can do it too much with our training workouts. It can be the mental stress of just decision fatigue. If you're managing so many different things and don't have a lot of like organization and systems that are valuable and serving you in different areas of your life. It can be social stress from loneliness or lack of community, right? So I just wanted to kind of show a lot of times broaden our perspective and understanding of like what are the stressors that can put our body into protection mode. And then the difference of what happens because you stress is a positive stress. All growth actually comes from stress. We see this when we go to the gym and we lift heavy weights, it actually kind of breaks down our muscle tissue and then it rebuilds back stronger. That's a stressor. That's an intentional stressor that we put on the body. That's a eustress. The difference between eustress and distress, which actually leads to disease and inflammation and breakdown, has to do with the recovery. Remember, we
Mhm.
talked about the moon cycles and the periods of activity and the periods of rest. If you look at the top of this picture, it shows that you do have a stressor and the body takes a dip, but then there's adequate recovery. So you recover and get to a place that's stronger, more resilient, more capable and adaptable than where you were previously. And then we have another stressor and our physiology dips. But as long as we have adequate recovery, again, we get to a place of strength and increased resilience. The challenge is that when we don't have that recovery phase in between, then the stressors pile up and that's where the diminishment happens. You can see the bottom where the chronic stress is creating this. And yeah, Rose is saying watching too much news on TV can be a stressor that has nothing to do with action. You're absolutely right. And this is why I like to show just again that type 2 type of stress is looking at there may be more areas than just our mental, emotional, have a way of different types of stress playing a part in instilling to my body what I can recover from and what type of system I need. Hold on, I'm just looking. Oh, I froze.
Yeah, you're good now.
Darn. Okay. I'm good now. Okay. Sometimes it's like my switching back and forth between I think the screen share, but now it's good. Yeah. So Helen, did you want to add anything about the stress and
Yeah, I know. You could see me nodding. I was thinking about, first of all, like the fact that we can look at stress from a holistic perspective and see all of those different types of stressors. I think we discount things like what Rose said, like the news or social stressors or, stress with your kids. And we tend to think like, oh, I'm just sort of stressed out. But we have to look at all of those parts. And for women who are super stressed out and who are looking for exercise as a way to de-stress, that's great. And I love strength training and muscle building. And I do that as a part of our program. But there's a certain limit where I see women not allowing themselves that recovery time that you're talking about, Amanda, where they might go to like a HIIT class, high intensity, and really go all in like 3 or 4 days a week. And that's putting that physical stress on their bodies when they're already stressed out. And that's actually working backwards for them. I had one client who was going to all of these classes and doing this, and she's like, I feel like I'm spinning my wheels and stuck in this place, but I know exercise is good for me, right? How many things do we say, I believe it's good for me, but it's not actually working? And she did this for 2 years. And she came to me and I
right?
said, we have to look differently at this because stress is a huge component. And when we backed off of all of the high intensity cardio and she started walking more and strength training more, she actually started to see better results. And as a result of that, just less stress overall, and then more openness to morning routines and getting more sleep. It's like you have to start somewhere in that beautiful, I don't know how many sides it was, hexagon
Six sides,
that
yes.
you showed. But starting in one of those areas, just as a starting point to be able to de-stress is so important. And sometimes that place is like way too much cardiovascular exercise.
That was for me, for sure. In my early 30s, before my autoimmune diagnosis, the same thing what you said, Helen. It's like I had been indoctrinated with the belief that the harder I sweat and the more I sweat, the healthier I am.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a context of understanding that anything done to excess can be detrimental,
Yep.
including physical activity and exercise. So absolutely, totally relate to what you shared. And that's an important piece. And this is where it's helpful to have somebody, help you look at these different layers and see what is the area that your body is needing support in, especially if we can prioritize that sequence and get some momentum. That kind of brings us back to the conversation. We're talking about these different types of metabolism driven imbalance. The first was the energy and output fatigue. Oftentimes that's correlated with our metabolism and our thyroid action, what I'm going to say, like that thyroid capacity or the insulin blood sugar balance. Then we have the stress response, and we just talked about in depth the different types of stressors that can be a part of the whole big stress umbrella. The third pattern that comes up very consistently is what I call fueling and digestion imbalance. And this is really an absorption driven metabolism challenge. This is where your body is not actually extracting the nutrients from the foods, even when you eat sometimes really healthy foods like salads and smoothies. And, I'm being very intentional to get my veggies in and have my protein, but your body perhaps can't break it down effectively. And it's not adequately absorbing those nutrients. So the metabolic system is under resourced. It's kind of like having a car and not putting enough gas in. It's not going to be able to drive and get you to California from Chicago, right? So and I like to go a layer deeper here because it is, yes, it's tactically speaking on the surface level, or the very first level, I would say, is like the core nutrients. A lot of the work that we do with clients is looking at micronutrient testing. Is, are those nutrients actually making it into your cells? Are they being absorbed
Mhm.
at a cellular level? But I do see a strong correlation time and time again with women who have difficulty with fueling and digestion and feeling undernourished physically, emotionally, how they're even prioritizing their own self-care and their own self-love. It's often like they put themselves lower on the list of priorities, and that correlates to, maybe it's like skipping lunch because you don't believe you have time
Yeah.
to nourish yourself, right? It can be making meals for everyone else in the family, or making sure they get to the practices and the activities and the, you know, different things that you have on your schedule, but not necessarily taking time for you to unplug and to recharge at the end of the day, right? So when we think about that type 3 fueling and digestion, the absorption, I actually think it goes hand in hand with not only the nutrient absorption and the gut health, but also our ability to receive support and to receive help. Um, and this is important here. When we go to heal, we want to look at how can we set up a simple and clear system to have nutrient dense meals. This is where I always talk about my PFFV: simple protein, fiber, healthy fat, vegetable
Hmm.
system, so that you can have it, make it more streamlined and easy, but also looking deeper at how can I make this a higher priority to nourish myself, and really step beyond that whole cutting calories. Cutting calories is just going to make it worse, honestly, if we're in this place.
It's true. Yeah, when I was doing Weight Watchers back in the day and cutting calories and counting all my points and everything, I was the sickest I ever was. I was bloated.
Mm.
I was uncomfortable. I tried to go vegan even, and not there's anything wrong with that, but back then I didn't know what I was doing, and I had a sensitivity to soy I didn't know about. I was so sick, so inflamed. I mean, red skin, like bloated, just overweight. Like everything was just working against me. Like I said earlier, that was back in my 20s. And, you think you're doing all the things right, but unless you address these things, Amanda, it's like you could be doing everything wrong.
Yeah. Definitely. And then that's what's frustrating. So I do want to stop and take a check in here. I know we've been talking about these three different patterns. I definitely want to give you all a tool to find out which pattern is speaking the loudest in your body. So I'll go ahead and pop into the chat a link to our Hormone Freedom Assessment. This is, 2 minutes, 18 questions. It's a little bit different. It's not going to be technical based on like, estrogen and progesterone. It's really asking you to, at the way that this shows up, what are some of the patterns that emerge in your body, in your life? So if you answer these questions in a few minutes, you're going to get clarity on which of these three patterns is speaking the loudest, how your body is showing up and asking you for help. It's not random. I just want you to know, like, you are patterned. And when we can decode some of this, it makes it, I don't know, it creates that clarity, creates inspiration and momentum and energy. And just like it did for my client, Michelle, I mean, when she came to me for 14 months, she had been following the same routine, right? Eating 1,400 calories, kind of like what you talked about, Helen, is like really tracking, eating her 1,400 calories, walking 5 days a week. She was focus on getting, good quality 7 to 8 hours of sleep, that we know that's important. She had eliminated alcohol because she's like, I just don't want that, those extra wasted calories. And she gained 11 pounds. So, quote unquote, doing all of the things on paper that we hear about and that you can, listen on Instagram and watch the posts and stuff and be like, okay, I'm doing these things, but I'm still having energy crashes in the afternoon. My weight has gone up. Her doctor said everything looked fine on her labs. So she felt like I must be the problem. It must be me because I don't see what else could be going on here. And when we connected, like she found out, so she was in that type 2, that stress mediated metabolism challenge, right? Stress response was high, and cortisol was definitely affecting her body's ability to really utilize fat as a fuel and to effectively convert that T4 into T3, that thyroid hormone. So it was not that her habits were wrong. It was just that her body had changed and she didn't have a new understanding and new clarity of how to work within the new rules, what to prioritize differently. So we adjusted her fuel timing to make sure that it was really supportive of her cortisol levels. We built in recovery. That was a good, like that stress thing that I said, like, okay, make sure we're having adequate recovery so the body is stronger and more resilient to match her exercise pattern. And we use some new technologies. And Helen, I know you're a big fan of this. We talk about mental technologies and different technologies to get rid of some of the unconscious and deep-seated
Mhm.
beliefs and thoughts that may be affecting you that you haven't even considered before. Because like I say, they're unconscious. And using a modality which I love and you love called emotional freedom technique, EFT, or tapping, this is what allowed her to shift fundamentally her body. And most importantly, she learned to trust her body again, right?
Yeah.
Once she can see the pattern, have some guidance and some targeted tools, it makes a huge difference. I see you nodding your head. Do you want to add anything else there about EFT or about anything else that came up?
Yeah, I mean, EFT is life-changing for anyone who hasn't done it. I've been a practitioner for a number of years. I love using this technique with my clients. It really, I mean, as Rose said, it really brings down cortisol. So, Rose, I assume that you have some experience with it as well, but it helps you talk to your nervous system and release some of those old patterns and beliefs. Amanda's been talking about a lot of patterns in the body, like things that you can listen to, metabolic issues, your weight, your energy levels, the way that you feel, maybe even brain fog and all of these things, but you can also listen to your thoughts. And if we don't take a moment to pause and listen to the thoughts that are getting in our way, whether it's over body dissatisfaction or the way that we think that we're supposed to be, and we don't resolve those thoughts, then we're going to be stuck. And maybe you might lose some weight at first, but you're going to be stuck in that pattern. You're going to come back to that pattern unless you get rid of some of those beliefs that continue to keep you from sustainable behavior change.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk about some core things to keep, some shifts, and some things to start to focus on. I think at the beginning of the day, we talked about how resistance training is important, especially for women over age 40. Maintaining that lean muscle mass on our bodies is metabolically healthy. That's going to help with the best conversion of fuel into energy. So resistance training with adequate recovery 2 to 3 times per week is something to keep if something you're working on, right? Protein anchored meals with that right balance. Like Helen said, it's not just throw protein and think that that's the solution for everything, but especially as we think about that first morning signal when you wake up and you're having your normal cortisol awakening response, we do want to signal to the body that we have adequate protein. So aiming for 25 to 30 grams per meal, with especially with that first signal, that first meal of the day. Movement that you genuinely enjoy. I mean, I think that's important, is like allowing yourself to bring enjoyment back into it. I know tennis. Helen, you're a big tennis player because it truly is enlivening for you. I love pickleball and skiing, but like doing movement simply because it's not a chore or a have to do, it's because it adds value to your life and it's enjoyable. These are things that are really important. And then rewiring those unconscious patterns. We talked about EFT as one modality and other modalities that we utilize to recognize those thoughts and see where that is putting us into that fight or flight response. Something that we want to shift to make sure that this is no longer really supportive, especially after 40 for women, is fasted exercise so that you go into, a workout class or some other type of exercise before eating anything, especially in the morning. That tends to prime women's cortisol curves to be more amplified all day long, especially if you start early in the morning with a fasted workout. The other thing to shift is eating less, like really going into this like dieting mode of restriction, cutting calories, using that as your primary weight loss strategy. We've talked about that several times today, how that ultimately really leaves you in a place of, I would say, diminished metabolic capacity in the future. And there's that rebound effect. The other thing is treating sleep like it is, acceptable to have it be marginal at best and not have it be a fully rejuvenating recovery experience. So that's an important piece is when we talk about that stress recovery, how are we setting ourselves up for good, solid, restorative sleep? And then the other thing to shift is filling every single hour on your calendar, feeling like you have to have back to back to back things. That's not gonna be sustainable and work for this season in life. And something to start that's really important is your highest leverage action to start is clarity. Gaining clarity on your body and what pattern is most dominant. Because what's for one woman, it may be more of a fueling and a, nourishment absorption opportunity for her to maximize. For another one, it's going to be eliminating her 2 a.m. cortisol spike, like blood sugar. We have to balance her blood sugar. For another, it's going to be rebuilding her gut health and helping to repair that nutrient absorption so her thyroid has the nutrients it needs, right? So this is why one protocol that works for one woman is not necessarily going to be the same exact fix for somebody else. So if you've ever blamed yourself, if you ever felt like it's lack of willpower or not enough discipline or I just can't follow through and see the change, then I want you to know that this is not your fault. Your body is not trying to fight you. It's just asking for more clarity, asking for you to lean in so that you can help decode these patterns and these symptoms and understand how your body's biology is signaling to you so that you can work with it and reprogram that biology and
Yeah,
seeing
totally. Rose said you're not a machine.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, you're definitely not a machine. You're so much more than that. And at this point, Amanda, I mean, it's so obvious that just because you have more information or like you said, like you're gathering things on social media or you're trying all of the things like piling on everything that we talked about doesn't mean that you're going to get some sort of like miraculous result. And it's really about the clarity of the patterns that each individual person has, not
Mhm.
just treating yourself as like a blanket statement of things to heal, but as like specific things that you can really pinpoint so that you can take action on the pattern that's in your body. And what I'm super excited about is what you and I have talked about, this amazing special opportunity for women to put into practice. And I think you should share with them what that is.
Yes, absolutely. It's this great opportunity. Like we talked about, clarity is key. The Hormone Freedom 30-day clarity experience. And the important thing is this is not another program. It's not another list of like videos for you to watch and then go try and implement on your own. This truly is a customized experience. Inside this 30-day container, we start with your assessment results. So we start with your hormone freedom assessment, which will indicate which pattern is the loudest for your body right now. We look at a whole complete health history and build that personalized roadmap. This is not generic advice. It's not guessing. It's not trial and error. Like, okay, I'm going to try this, and then I'll take a little bit of this, and then I'll try this new supplement. In this experience, you receive a one-on-one deep dive session with me to review your hormone pattern. You're going to get weekly personalized coaching. So every week we're going to be touching base and seeing what's working. What questions have popped up, or what did you try? And now you have a question about this and you're unsure. 30 days of support with two, what I call SOS calls in the course of the 30 days to implement the two key actions that we've talked about and identified are going to move the needle first, and then support along the way as you're going to be putting those into practice because inevitably we try things and then some new variation or some new real-time challenge comes up. So instead of wondering like, okay, what do I do? Or I kind of got stuck, you know exactly what your body needs and why. And the investment for this 30-day hormone freedom clarity experience is $497. And now let me say this, you can absolutely take what you learned today. Helen and I shared a lot of information and you can piece it together on your own. And for some of you, that may work. But if you're the woman who is tired of starting over, you're tired of the guessing and ready to finally understand your body and what that next step is, what you need, then I invite you to step into support. This is your chance to receive that guidance, to receive that, like someone coming hand in hand and working with you, not trying to figure it out alone, and recognize what your body is asking for. Receive that clarity. Because if you recognize yourself today in any of what we were talking about, that is not random. That is your body asking for a different approach. And if you're not sure if this is a fit for you, then just message me. You can send a DM because I would rather have a real conversation with you than have you sit in that place of uncertainty. Right? Because we are here, Helen and I both are here to support you. We know that when you have the right support, when you have the clarity, and when you have a simple game plan, that's when you're going to see momentum, change, and confidence in yourself. Liz says you're the best resource. Thank you, Liz. Great to see you chiming in. Again, yes, if you're, like I said, if you're tuning in on either of our streaming services, then definitely please feel free to drop your questions, drop a comment in the message. We'll go back and be checking those as well. And I'm excited to say we're going to be back here. Helen and I are going to be back here again next week, every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Eastern for Hormone Freedom Hour conversations. We're definitely going to have a few minutes here to take some questions. So before we wrap up, I invite you, if you learned something or had something that dropped in, a new insight, a new aha, some inspiration, please come again next week. Continue the conversation. Invite a friend. I'm sure you have a woman, a colleague, a sister, a, a, a friend that you know who could benefit from being in this conversation and really understanding that there are opportunities for solutions and clarity and change. Because Helen, you and I, we see this every week when we're working with women. It's really inspiring to see how women can change their health when given the resources and the
Yeah,
support.
it's so true. And also just knowing that you're not alone, right? Being able to reach out to a resource like you in a time where things feel really frustrating, to be able to get that clarity and to be able to, again, get curious with somebody who actually knows what they're talking about is so important instead of it just, again, keeping on piling all of the things that you think are going to work and staying in that place. It's so worth it to just at least have a conversation to be open to doing something different.
Yes, absolutely. And I see a question that says, what dietary or lifestyle changes um, do you recommend, like such as stress management, do you recommend to complement potential medication? Great question about medication. And actually, yes. So the beautiful thing about this is when we look at your unique pattern and we see what your body is signaling, that gives us an indication of like where your body needs support first. So it's always going to be a customized approach, not generic. And all of the like we talked about the lifestyle support tools that Helen and I bring to our clients, are going to complement medication, right? If anything, I definitely don't guarantee. I'm not a prescribing physician, so I do not change people's medication, but many clients have either completely eliminated or significantly reduced their anxiety medication, their acid reflux medication, their cholesterol medication, their different mood stabilizers, their even GLP-1 medication. So these are things that are complementary because we're working at a deeper foundational root to help the body's systems come into balance. And when there's more harmony and more synergy and balance there, sometimes the need for what was creating the medication is no longer present. So it can shift and change. Yeah, Helen, I don't know if you have anything that you want to add there. I know
I
you've
think
worked with people.
yeah, I mean, you said it so well. It's like, if you can come to a place where you feel comfort and stability in your body, then you get to talk to your doctor about lessening some of those medications or weaning off, or wherever it is that you would end up feeling comfortable. But I've absolutely seen the same results, particularly with IBS medication.
Mhm.
I was told that I had IBS back in the 2000 early 2000s, and that's when I started my journey to figure out what was actually going on because I didn't believe it. I'm like, really? Really? I'm going to take another medication. This is after a slew of other things that was going on for me at the time that have since really been resolved. But it was like, I don't think so. And that's when my
Mhm.
curiosity really opened. And that's when I started seeking direct support. And that's when I looked for things that weren't cookie cutter anymore, diets that I thought were going to help me, and where I really sought out targeted support for my body that actually ended up resolving that. And I do not have IBS. I
Yes,
absolutely do not. So I know how important it is to women to feel empowered over their health and to be able to take charge of some of these symptoms and issues that you're feeling in order to be able to make conscious decisions over your well-being is just the most important thing.
absolutely. Absolutely. So if you're ready for clarity, I'll drop the link in one more time for the Hormone Freedom 30-day clarity experience because it starts here, right? It starts with helping to decode, put together the puzzle pieces and understand what your body is trying to ask for help and for support, and to not have to try and figure that out alone. Do it with guidance and do it with somebody who is between Helen and I, we've helped, hundreds of women for many, many years. We have another question here. Which thyroid and hormone panels do you like to run? And do you look at both the T3 and the T4 levels in addition to TSH? Yeah, great question. So I do oftentimes have, like, I often have my clients run a full thyroid panel, which includes TSH. It also includes free T3 and free T4. Now, the free is important because the free tells us what is unbound, and that means it's available for uptake at the cell receptor. So free T3, free T4, TSH, also thyroid antibodies, thyroid TG and TPO. There's two different antibodies that we can look for if there has been some autoimmune activation. And actually, I'll just share, I recently last week had a new client that stepped in and she found out that her thyroid antibody number, her TPO number, um, has elevated and has gone up to that's typically what they use as a diagnosis of Hashimoto's. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
had when I was diagnosed with that. Um, the interesting thing about it is the conventional treatment or protocol is to treat with thyroid hormone replacement. And really negates the conversation that anytime we have an autoimmune activation or some sign of autoimmune antibodies, it's really an indication that the immune system needs support, which is centrally located in the gut. Two-thirds of the immune system is located in the gut. So we know that we get to support deeper layers of healing within the gut, as well as the immune system, and how it all signals together to first bring the immune system back into a calm place so that your thyroid antibody number can shift. So, yes, I definitely like to run a more full panel. What else besides TSH levels are important for making sure my thyroid condition is under control? So, again, we talked about looking at that full panel as well as nutrient status. So having a clarity of do we have the right minerals? Selenium is really important for thyroid hormone conversion. Magnesium is important. Having adequate glucose. You actually need to have adequate glucose in order to do that conversion. Zinc is another mineral that's important. So knowing, does my body have absorption of these key nutrients in order to have the system run as it's designed to run? So yes, this is where clarity and customized support really can be a window into new possibilities. All right. Well, I think we're right at the top of the hour. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you, Helen. This is a fun conversation, and we'll be back here again next Wednesday. So look forward to seeing you there. Join us again Wednesday, 12 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and bring a friend, someone that you know could benefit from these conversations. Thank you so much.